Hey guys, Infidel 1258 here, joined by my good buddy Isaac. We are going to hang out and talk Splinterlands. And if you guys are out there listening, love to see comments, questions, whatever you're curious about. Let's talk about it. Isaac, how you doing?
I'm doing good. Doing good. Making the new season climb back to gold.
Awesome.
It's always a fun couple days.
What rank are you in right now? Silver 2? Silver 1?
I think, I just crossed into maybe silver 1.
Nice.
But yeah.
Nice.
That reset's always fun.
Yeah, I know, right? I'm, where am I at? Diamond 3. And in my secondary account, I kind of have two accounts, really. I mean, I have lots of accounts, but I have two accounts that are like mine to play with and that I tend to. And one's kind of a gold. Like, look at this deck. This is my 1258 Scholar 1 account, and this is what I call my main alt account. It's got 450,000 power. It's a pretty, I would consider it a pretty strong deck. Like, just look at the summoners. I have legendary level 2. I have, what else? What are some of the high ones I got here? 4, 4, 5, 4, 7. So I have a level 7 blue, and I have a level 4, or like a level these are pretty decent summoners, I would say. Like, not Verisalacia is kind of whatever, like pretty low on the totem pole, but I'm saying like level wise. And yet with 500, almost 500,000 power, like last season it was stuck in gold. Now I was letting my bot run it because I was traveling last summer, but or last week. But I mean, I think if I was playing it, I suspect I'd be in at least lower diamond.
Yeah. I mean, are you playing it in wild or in modern?
They're both in wild.
Both in wild.
Yeah.
Yeah, I made the switch last season from modern to wild.
Oh yeah.
From wild to modern, I'm sorry, the other way.
Yep.
Just to see. Which is one thing I'm not super thrilled about. I'd like to see some improvement on that option. I feel like we have two game modes, but the system essentially forces you to pick one, right? Because your ECR is going to go down if you're playing two, and so if you have to pick one, and then the other one's going to, over a couple seasons, drop to bronze, and then if you want to switch back, that journey from bronze to back to diamond or something, for anybody other than a bot or a full-time player, is just a grind.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. There's with the two different leagues now, I would say that there's like a whole lot of extra, potentially a whole lot of extra grinding that is possible. One, you can have more accounts running different things. It creates a whole new interest at lower collection power, because you can play in that modern. You can get those modern cards with that lower collection power and make those higher thresholds. So there's like maybe a monetary incentive, because those rewards are significant, but the startup cost is like less significant than it used to be. And then, so it's like, I think there's an incentive to kind of play both if you can. And sometimes there's the option to literally play both with one and kind of juggle it. But I don't know. I think so far anyways, I've just been sticking to wild. I did see a tweet the other day talking about DEC payouts on modern in the first few hours of the season were like 150 DEC per win, which that's wild. Like, and are you seeing, like, I haven't been paying attention, to be honest, because I've got so many things going on. Are you finding that there's significant DEC payouts at the beginnings of the rank reward seasons right now?
I was getting about, like, in silver, I was getting 8 or 9 DEC a win, which,
how much? Say that again.
Silver,
how many?
8 or 9 per win on the first day.
Okay.
In silver. So that's not a horrible payout in silver. So it was definitely a bit higher the first day. So I don't know. It's interesting to see how those are going to even out, and what the bots will do. That's going to be something I'm watching. And that's one of the things I was trying to call out, and I don't know if people have caught on to it yet, right? But the bots have the ability to switch leagues in 3 days,
Mm-hmm.
essentially, right? A bot can say, I'm playing in Diamond, right, in Wild. And then they can realize that the Diamond Modern rewards are 2x better or something, right? And they can say, well, I want to be playing in that. And even if their account is in Bronze, they can run their ECR
Mm-hmm.
all the way down to 0 and play. I think the fastest bot I've seen can play about 2,400 games in a day,
Wow.
right? They can just spam it. And yeah, their ECR is 0, but then they can just wait 5 days or 2 days or whatever, 3 or 4 days, and get their ECR back up so they're getting rewards.
Yeah.
And now they've switched leagues. And I don't care how full time you're playing the game, you're not going to be able to switch leagues as fast as a bot. And because of that, you're forced to pick a league.
Yeah.
And so that is one small advantage the bots have right now that I think could be corrected.
Yeah.
By giving players the option to play without their ECR on. So you could actually, if you wanted to, over time, level up your secondary rank. Or maybe just if your rank in the other league is higher, you can keep playing without that ECR penalty of 5 or whatever. I don't know. I feel like there's something they can do there. I don't know if it's worth it. I don't know how big the pain point is for most players. Most people might be more, I'm a modern player, I'm a wild player, but I don't know.
Yeah. I see what you're saying. Definitely. And it's interesting because I think that's kind of, I think they've done a number of things to curtail the sort of distinct advantages that exist for bots. And even most recently, once you get down to, if you, maybe not everybody knows, but once you play your account below 50% ECR, you no longer lose 1% of your remaining ECR per battle. You actually lose 5% per battle. And so that dramatically ramps up your ECR burn rate from like the 50% threshold all the way to 0. And that should in a sense, like, what's the, like, gatekeep or at least heavily limit the effectiveness of one of the angles of bots. Like Isaac was just saying, they can play some of them can play 2,400 matches in a single day, and if they don't even care about ECR, they can do that automated win fashion and, like, through brute force climb into Diamond. Because if you play 2,400 battles and you win, 50% of them or 45% of them or whatever, it's like, it's still going to get you up there, because that's just, like, actually playing more games will allow you to climb faster. But that ECR is the chain holding you back. But they don't really care because they burn that ECR to the ground, and then it'll be 4 days later, it'll be fully recharged, or even 3 days later, it's going to be at 75%. And that's enough. Even, 60% is enough to start slowly grinding and slowly accumulating at that new level. So, I see that as a problem, and I'm not sure how big of a problem, because frankly, I think some of the other implications or limitations that have been placed on bots lately, ghost card nerfs and that 5% ECR burn rate, and there's one more that I'm skipping right now. Even how they changed the loot chests, that you need to own the card. Oh, and I said ghost card nerfs. So a few different things though. And it strikes me that they're going to keep iterating, and maybe they will try something like you were just suggesting, Isaac. We'll see, I guess. But I don't see this issue that we just described as one that is, absolutely game breaking. It's more like, dang, I wish I could do that too. And here's one thing I'll throw out there, and I want to send some shout outs to the crowd here before we go too much further. But one idea, I heard somebody throw it in a comment, like, bots are just here. What if Splinterlands just literally said, like, auto battle? Like, you could have a button that, like, auto battled. I don't see why they absolutely could, and it would essentially be like, it'd be their bot that you can just turn on anytime you want. And I don't think they would love that idea, because they don't want to make this like that sort of experience. But here's the thing. It is that sort of experience. Like, bots are here, and I don't know I almost feel as though stuff like this end up being a hurdle to those who can't figure out the technology, in this case bots, but in other cases, if you couldn't figure out, for instance, like how to use Hive engine because it's on the Hive blockchain, you don't really know about SPS, or Hive and Hive's back dollars, and how does the market work. These are like little hurdles that prevent normal gamers who might not understand blockchain or, like, for instance, programming to like get the full reward opportunity. And I don't know if that hurdle, I don't want to make this a bot game. I really don't. And it kind of sounds like I want that, but I don't. I'm just saying, if that's already here, I don't know, maybe it makes sense to just say, look, you could have that option. You just turn it on. Because if they can do 2,400 battles, man, in a day, I haven't heard of that. The one I use doesn't have that function. We can only do 4 battles per hour at the most, and that's it. So from the programming point forward, like I wouldn't have that option. And so yeah. I definitely want to hear your thoughts on that, Isaac, but just let me say some shout outs here to some Yuki's here. Hey buddy, good to see you, man. Games World, NFT Gaming, Zach, Alex, Mario. I haven't talked to you in a long time, my dude. I'm glad you're here. Archie's here. Archie Labrador. I wonder if you're actually in Labrador, if that's your last name. And Dragon, of course. Nice. I'm in Bali. Nice, man. Eli, good to see you, buddy. Isaac, is that you, Isaac?
Yeah, that's me.
Okay.
So. Yeah, I think bots are here to stay, and like we were talking about earlier, that's my career. I develop bots for major companies that do business tasks on a daily basis, and the bot technology is just getting so advanced out there that, I mean, if you've played any game that involves an economy, even if it's not a real economy, like World of Warcraft, MMOs, you know that, I mean, there's people botting those games, which are much more complex to bot, and they put in millions of dollars of anti-bot technology, and they still can't catch them all because the bot technology is so good. So everybody's screaming ban the bots. I'm like, I don't think they get how good the bots are. I think you have to figure out how to beat the bots, right? The only way bots are going to decline is when players start figuring out how to beat them at their own game. Mm-hmm. And the problem you would find, my immediate programmer mindset is, if you tell me there is a generic bot, right, that anybody can use, I'm immediately going to figure out what teams that bot plays and what scenarios. And that is always going to be what my bot plays, mm-hmm. is what beats the bot that Splinterlands runs, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm going to just counter Splinterlands bot, and I'm going to win 70-80% of my games at that point, for everybody that's just hitting auto battle, right? Because everybody's going to be lazy and hit auto battle. So I mean, you gotta think about what can happen, and these bots. I mean, these bots do serve a purpose in Splinterlands. They do provide a constant supply of games, so that when you hit "I want to play now," no matter what league of what division you're playing in, you will get a game in about 30 seconds. Yeah, and a lot of that thanks to the fact we have so many people that are botting. Yeah, that there is people always there to play. Yeah. I used to wait 2 minutes plus to get a game, and I remember thinking to myself, like, did my this happened regularly, guys, when I used to play the game. I would load up a battle, and I would say to myself, did the server just crash and I don't even know it? Because it's literally taken 2 minutes to find a match, and maybe it just the window hasn't refreshed, and on my computer, because my connectivity is broken or something, and I would refresh, and then it'd be like, oh, I have a match. And it's already 2 minutes into the team selection, because you didn't know. You're standing there waiting for a match to happen, and maybe it really was trying to find you an opponent, or maybe there was like a problem, because it literally took 2-3 minutes, and it was super. But bots, again, I don't love that bots would ever be the core of what we have here, but in some sense they are a major part. And so I like I've said in previous videos, I don't really care about like idealistic
like, hey man, like it should, like I don't want any bots here because it's a game. It should be for people that, like, that's, to me, that's just a dream. Like, it's not the reality. So let's look at what the reality is. And then people say, well, like, ban the bots, but that's not realistic either. And you touched on a point, Isaac. You said something like, I would just counter the bot. Like, you got to beat the bot. Like, that's one of the things, like, they are vulnerable, and I can show, data on it. Like, I mean, last season, my main account with almost 2 million power earned 54 chests, champion chests, which is pretty good. But I mean, definitely I can do 60, 70 chests with my effort. So it's just like, the bot isn't as good, and that's a hugely expensive deck. And then this one with 500,000 or 450,000 power, it just stayed in gold. And I mean, that's like easily, you and me have talked, silver level chests or silver level decks can get you into champion, or I mean, low diamond. And so this deck is diamond capable, but the bot wasn't able. And it's in part because they really just try the thing that everybody tries. And this is something I've been saying or thinking lately. Isaac, I want to hear your thoughts on this. Here's the problem with bots. They look at the data of what teams have been played the most, and then they use that, the win rates associated with that, to try and choose the most likely successful team. But that data pool is corrupt because it is a sample of their own selections, which are, I would argue, intrinsically limited in sort of creativity and imagination in the first place. And so, like, for instance, if you come in with a card that, and this is notorious, like bots, anybody who uses bots knows a lot of the older beta cards or alpha cards or some of the more rare cards, they won't even know what to do with it. They won't use your Yodens and stuff like this because the data around some of these amazing legendary monsters or summoners, there's only 44 battles. Like, the bot doesn't know how to compute the effectiveness of something like this when it'd so much rather use Kelly Friendle. And that's what I see when I do let my bot run. Like, I have, like, look at this. This is my Infidel 12. These are all bot battles. It's using Mother Kala. It's got Quixodevious. It's got Obsidian, Kelly Friendle. I have Grandmaster Wraith on this account. It hasn't, like, not one of these matches is Grandmaster Wraith. Are you telling me that you'd rather play Tarsa than, like, I mean, come on, not once in 20 battles Grandmaster Wraith doesn't get shown, but it's because that data pool is blinding the bot from because it doesn't have the imagination to think past its own limitations, if you know what I mean. What do you think about that?
So you've hit the exact nail on the head of how to beat the bots and what the human advantage is here, right? And I've actually talked to a few people about maybe building a tool that would help players, right? So the bot is simple. It's always going to play the win rate deck it can play with its cards at that mana cost rule set, right? It's just a pure search all the data, tell me which deck's the best, I'll play that. There is clearly no deck in this game has 100% win rate at any scenario. Mm-hmm. Even the weird combos that are like, llama and a healing guy. Like, there's ways to counter that at most levels, right? So the bot doesn't actually have a 100% win rate deck. It's just playing what it thinks is probably 50 or 60% win rate. If you are smart enough to know what the bot's about to play, you can counter it. And because it would take a large group of players playing this strategy for a long point of time to change the win rate of that to something else, you will have a huge window of just spamming these decks against these decks until you have to rethink and the bot has to rethink. Mm-hmm. So just understanding that basic game theory of, I know what the bots are going to play.
Yeah.
All I have to do is beat that with some strategy, and I'm going to win, and I'm going to win, and I'm going to win. You're not going to win everything, but you're going to win. The bot's playing a 55, 56% win rate, and you've given yourself a 65, 70% win rate most of the time. You're going to be beating the bots and climbing faster.
Yes.
And
yeah, I totally agree. And it's it's a deeply important point, because the more we recognize, to me, what it boils down to is this, that when you're recognizing the evolution of the meta in a game like Splinterlands, you need to understand that it doesn't happen all at once. Games or certain monster cards that are amazing don't necessarily show themselves as leaders, as meta definers until weeks or months later. Why would that happen? Why would that be so? If it's obviously powerful, it should just grab and just gain traction and take over the game. No, because what happens is somebody identifies the power of a card. It's a new summoner, it's a new tank, it's a combination of certain monsters together. They recognize a certain capability and synergy that's really successful, and they do it on their own. And they're probably not like a streamer, so they're just doing it in isolation, and maybe occasionally you play them or I play them and you get beaten by it, and then you're like, wow, that really works. Like what they just did there, I see what that synergy, I've never thought that way before. I'm going to try that. And then you do it, and now 2 people are doing it, and then 4 people are doing it, and 8 people, and maybe it doesn't happen so exponentially. Even maybe it's just a slower growth rate, the slow burn, because it's occasionally the case that it's not so clear cut that you lost because their team was OP. But when we recognize that an OP build, it starts to grow in that way, and then it starts showing up in the gameplay data, and then the bots start running with it, and then it starts being the thing that you see all over the place. And that's when you have to step in, like Isaac just said, and recognize how obvious they are about picking it, and when they throw that curveball, like, be prepared for it, like, because there's always a counter to every single play. I mean, even the highest level legendaries, there's ways to beat them in the right rule set, in the right context, but it takes imagination and creativity.
Cameron asked a really good question, because I hear this question a lot, and I think it's a misunderstanding of the strategy. And how can I tell I'm going to play against a bot prior to the battle? You don't need to know you're going to play against a bot, right? If you're climbing and you're pushing, you're assuming that the players you're playing against are getting better. And you're assuming that they're trying to win too. And you know the bots are going to play the highest win rate. So what you're assuming is that the likelihood that the top strategy is going to be played by your opponent is getting higher the higher you climb.
Yep.
This is something, I wrote a little article about game theory on Peak, but I didn't get into too much details. But the truth about it is, the higher you climb, the more game theory applies, because the more you understand that your opponent is making the proper play, right? It's like in poker. If you're a good poker player and you sit down at a table with amateurs, you can get wiped out, because there's no way to tell what they're going to do. They're amateurs, they don't even know what they're doing.
Yeah.
So you can't read them. Yeah. But as you climb in Splinterlands, the players are making the same good decisions. So you just need to be looking at the rule set, determining what would be the most powerful thing to play. And then you have to determine, with your collection, what you have in your cards. Do you think you're better playing that most powerful strategy? Are you better playing a counter strategy to that most powerful strategy? And that's kind of the game you get into as you go up. The good thing is, the bots are always going to play that most powerful strategy. But if you've got every card and they're maxed out, and you think playing the best strategy here gives you the best odds, play it. But if you think, hey, I think they're going to play it and I've got a really solid counter, you play the counter. And it doesn't have to be a bot, but people trying to apply game theory in bronze may find out, nope, that person just spams Alric water every game. That water is available no matter what. And,
Yeah, man. That's this is a conversation that I feel like continues to grow and need revisiting, because there's always this evolution of how Splinterlands is responding, and there's always an evolution to the technology, and then the bots are getting maybe I think they're getting smarter, and they probably always will. But the question is, like, can we innovate alongside them? And I think, I've heard somebody say, you guys have heard about how like famous robots, like computers, will beat the best chess players, or like AlphaGo, like a robot will beat the best AlphaGo players. It's apparently the most complicated game in the universe because of how many options of movement you could do any one.
You want to know what the funny thing about that is?
Yeah.
The AlphaGo robot. So Go is the most complicated board game in the world. It's a fun board game if you like strategy games. It literally has 361 possible opening moves, and then there's 60 responses, and then it just goes down by one every time. That's why it's so complex. The most advanced robot in the world tied the world champion, right? And because they play sets, and that was fine. But then they made the robot play the person when the person knew it was a robot they were playing.
Yeah.
And the robot lost every game.
Huh.
Once the Go player knew it was a robot.
Interesting.
It could only tie the best player when the player was treating it as a human. Like once it knew it was following patterns and Josekis and standard moves, it found ways to exploit those.
That makes me think of what you said about the poker analogy earlier, and like, because like when you're like, I used to play a lot of poker, and I was never, high level good, but I played for some significant money, and I won some significant, pots, and I remember, never having more trouble than sitting down at a table where like nobody knows what they're doing, and they're just like, they don't really care. It's like a charity event, and they're just like, I'm here for fun, and like if I lose, I'll go have another drink, and they're pushing all in on anything. Like, I mean, ace two, they're all in, and like the attorney could be like thousands of dollars. It's like a serious match, but like they don't really believe that they can win, and they don't really know what a good hand is even. So but you don't know how to play that because you don't know how to read that, because it's like not necessarily following any rules. But once someone's following rules, this is like how you've heard people say, like, they had a tell. It's like every time they had a good hand, they bet so many chips, or every time they had a so-so hand, they like fold to any raise. It's like these things are tells, and your opponent will exploit you on them when they understand the rules by which you play. And that's the key for us as imaginative, actual humans playing this thing. We can win, we will win, not all the games, but enough games to have fun with this thing, even if bots are prolific here. Yeah.
So somebody commented that it sounds like what we're talking about is a complicated paper, rock, scissors. It's starting, so the basic concept, right, is that there is, so in card games, there's like you were talking about meta. And this is one of the things that drew me to Splinterlands, because I played competitive Hearthstone and Magic. I like traveled, did tours, did pro tour events for Magic, Grand Prix for Hearthstone. And the one thing that I love about Splinterlands is you will not solve the meta, because it's different every game you play. The rule changes between games are so significant that the meta of what wins in one rule set is not the same that wins in the next rule set. The mana cost changes, all of that affects what the best deck is. So you as the player have to be able to look at the rules and make the determination when you see it what the best deck is.
Yes.
That in game theory we call it in, right? It's the best deck. And that's regardless of your collection. That doesn't matter about your collection. That's just the rules.
Yep.
And the best deck may be Jotun, Kitty, whatever. But you have to determine what the best deck is. And then you start making the determinations from your collection. Well, what's my best deck? How's that fare against the best deck? Okay, what beats the best deck? And we call that into. You're solving for that. You're saying, what's the answer to the best deck? Should I play that? And then there's something called N3, but it's not actually paper, rock, scissors. You're not trying to say, well, what beats the N2 deck that beats the best deck? You're trying to say, is there a deck that exists that exposes a common weakness in the other two decks they're likely to play? Like, both of those are going to be Magic decks. So I'm going to play a completely anti-Magic deck. Now, if they don't play Magic and you play a completely anti-Magic deck, you're going to lose. But if they play a Magic deck, you could win with much weaker cards. So that's kind of the game theory we talk about in card games of in 2, in 3, where we're saying what's the best deck, what beats the best deck, and is there a deck that exposes a weakness that both of those decks share?
Yeah.
And there's certain cards you need to own if you want to play that way. And that's something I'm working on a list of. Like, if you want to play that counter strategy, you need to be buying answer cards, not power. You need to be getting your Sun Gazers and your Mylors, right? Those are answer cards, not like both of these cards are answer cards. They're really good cards, but they like you play Mylor against a Magic team or against a range team, and he does nothing, right?
Yeah.
So he's an answer card to melee.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, definitely. There is like, that's the thing about this game, the uniqueness of every battle being the mana cap, the rule set, the interplay between two rule sets, your individual deck, your opponent's individual deck. There is a number of variations that make almost every single match slightly different and require a degree of creativity and innovation that is difficult to boil down to rock, paper, scissors. And I would argue that it's going to get even more complicated as we move into a place where land is live and we're getting items and spells and whatever. I forget what they're called. Items. I think I keep calling them items and spells.
Equipments.
Say that again?
Yeah, spells and equipment sound like they may add another level of complexity that makes counterplay the better choice, right?
Yeah.
Because then you can even respond, hey, I was wrong, or my counter didn't work. Maybe I can still recover this game with a good item or a spell.
Mm-hmm.
But